Things have been hectic as crap. But hey, guess what? It's Thursday, so it's time to talk Bitcoin and politics. But before we do, I I would like to say thanks to our Roundly X. Listen, folks, the best way to get Bitcoin is to do it through rounding up your purchases. Roundly X, they actually connect with your debit card, credit card. When you swipe it and you make a purchase, it rounds that up, and that's saved in Satoshis and right to you. There's no better way to do it. And in fact, if you sign up with the code Bitcoin Politics, you'll get $4 in Bitcoin. We'd like to once again thank Roundly X. And now let's get on with the show. All right, folks. As I said, it's Thursday. It's time to talk Bitcoin and politics once again. My name is Paul McNeil, Crypto Curator. You can check out my website at thecryptocurator.com. That's where you'll find all the information. But I have a couple of other sponsors that I'd like to mention because and when I mention these are things that I love because I use them myself, right? And so when you look at the host of sponsors, the people that make the show possible, anything from Super Coffee to Forward Your Medical Care. It's a new way of looking at medical care. So check out these sponsors. They're linked on the slide presentation, make available to you all after the show's over, but definitely check them out. You might find that some of it might actually interest you. Now that we've sort of paid for the show, let's get on and start talking about what's really going on with this next midterm election. There's really a lot going on, and I think you guys are going to want to be aware. Now, one of the things that I found to be shocking is that the next slew of states have no Bitcoin hodlers. Now, let me classify this. The way I define a hodler is by their financial disclosure. So if they hodl, but they haven't disclosed it in their financial disclosure, I don't consider them a hodler. Now, if they've mentioned in the press and it's come to light that they hold Bitcoin, I'll indicate that. But so far, in this next slew of states, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, and Montana, if you live in any of those states, shame on you guys because your representatives should be holding Bitcoin. Your senators should be holding Bitcoin at some level. And none of these are indicating that. Now, we do have some advocates in this group, but none of them have indicated they're holding Bitcoin. So one of the things I like to do on this show is talk about the legislation that comes into play, right? And so when we start looking at the legislation that the representatives in these states are actually covering, it gets really interesting fast, and there is a lot. Now, Kentucky is one of the states that really didn't have anybody sponsoring any bills. But in Massachusetts, Michigan, and Mississippi, they all have folks that are doing it. And I'll just run through a slew of these names just to give you a hint of what's going on. As you can see, that there's a lot of Democratic representation here, probably for reasons that some of us don't like, but it is representative. So Representative Stephen Lynch, he's a Democrat in Massachusetts. He has HR 7231. And then when you look at, of course, our favorite person, Senator Elizabeth Warren up in Massachusetts, she has two bills, Senate Bill 2943 and 3867. As we look at Michigan, we have four representatives there. Well, two representatives, three representatives, one senator, sorry, who's representing bills there. Rashida Tlaib, Elisa Slotton, and Peter Medry. And I'm going to badger their names, so I apologize for that. And of course, Debbie Stabenow. Now, Michigan is a hot state when it comes to regulation. And again, if you look, you're going to probably get a sense of why. And some of it might not sit too well with some of us. In Minnesota, Tom Emmer, of course, everyone knows Tom Emmer. He is a huge Bitcoin advocate, and he's got three bills in the House. And then we've got Senator Roger Wicker in Mississippi, and he has one bill in the Senate. So as we look at the co-sponsors, there is a slew of them, and I'm not going to even begin to try to read off their names, whatever. This is going to be made available so that you all will have access to the slides. But as you can see, there is a lot of bills in Congress, both the House and the Senate. Some of them are companion bills, which means that both chambers are putting forth legislation to really push it forward. And so, again, this is to show you guys the volume of activity that's happening in Congress, and this is even more reason why we all should really be connecting with our representatives and voicing our opinions when it comes to this legislation. Now, again, as I told you guys many times, my good friend George over at Cap Hill Crypto, he makes all this possible. Without his legislative track, this would not be made possible. There's going to be a link in this presentation. You can get to it. Please spend some time there so that you can understand this legislation even better than I do. The next slide, you'll see I've been to highlight a few of these bills that are there. The first one, HR 154, is a rescue act for Black and community banks. Now, when you look at this one, it requires the comptroller to do a general, and most of these bills, and I'll preface this by saying this, most of these bills are studies, right? A lot of this legislation that's going through Congress is not about putting some particular law in place. It's more about trying to study digital assets. And I have to applaud Congress from the perspective that they are at least studying this, right? There, and a lot of people jump to conclusions, and we like to think that, oh, they're coming to get us. But right now it's a study phase. And that's one of the things that you need to know more than anything. So it's requiring the Comptroller General to study whether blockchain technology could be used to increase investments by lower income individuals and startups and other crowdfunded companies, which, this is if the study comes back good and favorable, this is going to be really good for people that are in low income individuals that's in these communities, startups, crowdfunded type companies, right? Okay, let's move on to our next bill. And this one is going to be HR 296. It's the Financial Technology Protection Act. This one is by Representative Stephen Lynch. He's a Democrat, and he's just a co-sponsor, of course. But it establishes an initiative aimed at curbing illicit use of digital currencies. Folks, listen, again, I know we don't like regulation, but sometimes some of this can be really good, specifically for the bad actors. Now, this is talking about particularly funding terrorism. And I know we all have our views when it comes to sanctioning countries, sanctioning individuals, sanctioning wallets. This should be uncensorable, decentralized, all of the buzzwords that's out there. But again, we all know on Twitter that there's a lot of scamming that goes on. If you look, and we've renamed October to what? Not Uptober, but Hacktober. There's so many hacks going on, things like that. This bill's not talking about that, but it is talking about terrorism. And so sometimes the hacks that take place is money that goes to fund terrorism. And I think most of us, those people that are fair-minded, they would say, yes, we don't want money going to fund terrorism. And if that's being done through digital assets, I think that we should do something about that. And again, it depends on how it's done. And I get it's a thin line to walk, right? It's a tightrope. Balance yourself, but between trying to put in regulation that protects people and regulation that stifles innovation, or regulation that surveils us, or regulation that is in a bad way. It's challenging. I know if I was a member of Congress, it would be hard to try to get your hands around this industry because it really has grown really fast, and it's like the Wild Wild West. So they're trying to put some structure around it, and the Financial Technology Protection Act might be an act that can do that. So let's look at the next bill. And by the way, that I did say that was Stephen Lynch that is this co-sponsor there. The next one is actually the sponsor, of course, is Democrat, and the co-sponsor is Democrat. So this is not a bipartisan bill, but it's the Atomic Boost to Communities Act. It's HR 1030. And what this does is it directs the Treasury Secretary to establish a program to provide monthly payments to the U.S. consumers during like COVID-19 pandemics to recover from the emergency. Again, I'm not a big fan of us pushing money out to people, even in a situation like COVID, right? And I know that can be hard, but the reality is does it help some people? Yes. Does it hurt others? Yes. A lot of times things can't be just generalized. And so providing money to everybody during COVID, it's just not a smart thing to do. Listen, if people are in a situation to where they really need it and you can do the work to prove that they really need it, Maybe, right? And that's a big maybe. I'm not a fan of blanketly slamming money into consumers' pocket government. Granted, that's what this is going to do. And this is why there's a rift between the people in the Bitcoin community, I think, and Democrats, is because Democrats sometimes put bills out there that do things like this. And what people have to realize, and these are, I'm considered more conservative, fiscally conservative, but this is where I think it's dangerous just to give people things, because you are putting them in a bad position. You're putting them in a position to depend on the government for emergencies. And I don't think that that's a smart thing to do. We all have emergencies that come up. This is what would be taught when we're growing up and taught in schools and taught everywhere is financial responsibility. And one of those things is always have that rainy day fund. I get it. I know not everybody is in a position to do that, but I do believe that just slamming money in people's pockets is not the right thing to do either, right? And if you're fair-minded, you would probably agree. I'm not here to toe the Democratic platform. I'm not here to toe the Republican platform. I'm not here to toe any platform. Common sense is common sense. And who do you think ultimately is going to pay for all of this money being slammed into the system? We are, at the end of the day. So it's a dangerous precedent just to have the government, money printer go burr, slamming money into the economy this way. And then we have high inflation. You're hurt either way, right? You're hurt rather you did it, and you're hurt rather you do it. We need people to not look at everything as a nail, right? Hammer, just nail it. You can't do that. And I think that's what we've done. This bill, I'm not a big fan of. Because the bill goes on and it says it provides the distribution of such funds may occur via the establishment of a digital dollar wallet, Fed accounts, right? No, the Fed shouldn't have an account. And there are other bills that are in Congress that saying the Fed should never, ever, ever develop accounts for citizens. That's just, the Federal Reserve is not a private public company. It's a private. I think it's dangerous to do that. You wind up hurting the community banks. You wind up hurting some of the other banks in the process of people direct accounts to the Fed. Now, here's the thing. Will we ultimately see the Fed have some type of an account where the public can have access to it in situations like this? Maybe. And again, right, you have to balance this. I don't think the Fed should be providing banking services to residents, to citizens. No, that's dangerous. Let the banks do that. At the same time, should the Fed have a mechanism to be able to provide funds in the case of an emergency? Again, like I said, I teeter on that, right? Some people might need that and benefit from it, but you can't do that for everybody and just start slamming money in it. So, okay, I think I said that enough. Let's move to the next bill. The next one is HR 1602. This is the Eliminate Barriers to Innovation Act. This one directs the SEC and the CFTC to create a working group on digital assets. And again, these types of bills I do support because they're creating working groups to study this stuff, look at this stuff, determine what works and what doesn't work. But this working group would report to Congress and help clarify differences in blockchain tokens between the two agencies and provide recommendations regarding digital assets, market fairness, and efforts to reduce fraud and manipulation. Representative Stephen Lynch, again, Democrat, is co-sponsoring this bill. I don't remember who the sponsor is of this bill, but again, and I believe this one is bipartisan. Actually, let me check this real fast because I do want to check this out. 1602, again, looking at the legislative tracker. Yes, a Republican actually sponsored this bill. It's Patrick McHenry, and we've got Stephen Lynch, who's a Democrat, who is co-sponsoring it. Now, and there's other co-sponsors as well. One's from North Carolina and Steve Lynch is from Massachusetts, cross states, right? And this is great to see this type of activity in Congress, people working together to try to help who's going to oversee this stuff, SEC, CFTC. And if you remember, I believe it was the SEC that recently came out and said, yeah, the CFTC should handle the commodities. Bitcoin's a commodity, and maybe Ethereum will ultimately be a commodity. I know a lot of people don't agree with that. It's not a security, right? Is it a security? Not a security? Nobody knows. But I think that we're starting to see these regulators sort of put their heads together and try and make sense of all of this. And yeah, again, it's easy for us to always look at the negative side of government and talk bad about the government and, oh, screw the government. But at the same time, and I believe it was Jon Stewart that once said, these people, some of these people, some, and I say that lightly, they actually go up there to get stuff done every day. And this is the way this country works and it operates. If they did not do their jobs and they did not work at all, we would see a lot more calamity. And I know some of you might disagree with me and say, no, that might make things better. But unfortunately, our system is built where we have to have people that are, in fact, working in Congress and getting things done. And so, and I believe it was Dennis Porter who brought this up, who said, you don't want to go to your representative just screaming and yelling obscenities, and no one's going to respond well to that, right? Meet with their staff, talk with their staff, tweet at them. I'm a big fan of tweeting at them. Their staff's going to see it. They might see it, right? And so email them, pick up the phone and call them, drop your comments. All of these things ultimately matter. If you remember, I had a show with George on. He was a legislative aide, I believe, for John Cornyn, and he was saying the process, the way it works is, listen, John Cornyn is one senator. He cannot speak to every constituent in Texas, just can't. So his staff does a lot of that. And so when you reach out to the staff, realize sometimes the staff might not be up to speed on all of this technology, and you could possibly help orange pill them. And if you orange pill their staffs and let their staffs orange pill the senator or the representative, how great would that be? And it was Dennis Porter who said, us focusing on the federal representatives, it's good, but the local level is where you can get more traction. And so even your local state and Senate, House and Senate representatives should be reached out to and talk with on a regular basis as well. And so once we as citizens are talking to all of these representatives, hopefully we live in a democratic society, the majority wins. And that's the rule of this country. The majority win. And in most cases, there are some times where the majority really can be screwy, and we have to push against that, right? So we have methods to handle that, and that's very important. So let's take a look at our next bill, and this one's HR 3612. It's a Blockchain Promotion Act of 2021. It establishes, again, a working group to recommend to Congress a definition of blockchain technology. Representative Brett Guthrie from Kentucky, and that was the only Kentucky person that I take it back. It's one other one, but no, I take it back. That was the only Kentucky person that had sponsored a bill. It's really weird. Kentucky's not that active. Hey, Fibbo Swanee, I'm sorry, man. Get on the ball. Start talking to the people. Fibbo Swanee, I believe, is from Kentucky, so I had to throw that in there. Fibbo. Love you. All right. The next bill is going to be HR 3639. This is the Blockchain Innovation Act. Again, Guthrie is sponsoring this one. This one directs the Secretary of Commerce to conduct a study and submit to Congress a report of the state of blockchain technology and issues for consumer protection. Again, trying to put safeguards in place. The next bill is HR 3723. It's the Blockchain Innovation Act. And as you know, a lot of the are being co-sponsored by Brett Guthrie are bills dealing with blockchain technology. Why decided to focus on the blockchain technology piece? Not sure. But anyway, this one directs the Department of Commerce to consult with the FTC and other relevant agencies to study potential applications of blockchain technology. And a lot of these sound repetitive, and a lot of them most likely are. The chances of getting any of this legislation through Congress in this year won't happen. The elections are coming up next month, and we're getting very close. The races are going to look very interesting. We're going to switch over to 538 soon and take a look at that, but this is going to be a very interesting midterm election. Let me put it that way. Because it's really, really close, both in the Senate. We know that the Senate is, by a thread, controlled by the Democrats, the House controlled by Republicans. The likelihood of the House flipping to Democrat control ain't gonna happen. The chances of the Senate flipping to Republican control, very possible. And if we get both chambers Republicans, you can forget anything happening in the next year. Joe Biden would be a lame duck president for the next 2 years, and there's nothing gonna be going on. Fingers crossed he doesn't run again, but we know that he is. Okay, let's go to the next bill. It's gonna be HR 6006. This is a really good one. It's the Keep Innovation in America Act. Co-sponsor is Tom Emmer and Jake I'm not going to even Claus from Massachusetts. So it expands the definition of broker for the purpose of tax information reporting to include any person who, for consideration, stands ready in the ordinary course of a trade or business to affect the sales of digital assets at the direction of their customers. So if again, remember the infrastructure bills what brought this about because they had a definition of broker in there that was way whacked. And so Tom is co-sponsoring this one. And the sponsor of this bill is, drum roll please, Patrick McHenry of North Carolina. So those guys are putting their heads together, trying to come up with, allow us to keep innovating. Don't try to put something in so rigid that's going to wind up killing the innovation that's potentially out there. In addition, this bill has a de minimis act, requires a study and a report for the treatment of digital assets as cash for the purpose of reporting requirements of more than $10,000, right? So if you go to the bank right now and you try and deposit $10,000, check this out. I did it once. Go to the bank, try and deposit $10,000. Everyone looks at you all weird. And then the lady comes out with the form like, oh, by the way, can you fill out this form? It's a, I forget the name of the form, but it's a form basically you have to fill out to say, I am who I am. I'm depositing this money, where I got this money from, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's very, very interesting. I want to say it's a SARS report. But the point of having that is so that they can track large sums of money moving through the financial system. They would do the same thing. Us in crypto, Bitcoin, we don't want that kind of stuff like that, right? None of their business. But the reality is, if that's the case, if a rule like that wasn't implemented, then the terrorists and the criminals could just run wild, right? They could send all kinds of money. Money laundering would go bananas. And so if the traditional system can't get away with it, why would we get away with it in crypto? Again, this is the reason why they're putting provision in place to sort of prevent that. I'm not a fan of too much information. I think sometimes when you go in places, they ask you for information. It's like, why do you even need it? You don't need that information. For example, not to go off on a tangent, but every time you go somewhere, they ask you for your address. If you're never going to ship anything to me and never say anything to me, why do you need my address? You don't. You shouldn't have my address. One of the great things they were talking about with digital IDs was that you could be able to use your ID in a way where you could safeguard all your information. Right now, if you pull out your driver's license and take a look at it, it has your name, birthday, height, weight, eye color, all this information, right? So if you have a driver's license to someone, like say at a club, they've got all this information, your address and much information, right? The only thing a club will know is, are you 21 or older? If you are, you can get in the door, and that's all they need to know. They don't really need to know your name. So digital IDs really help with that. I sort of went off on a tangent there, but point I'm saying is that I'm not a big fan of just giving out tons of information to every organization you come to, but that's what our system currently requires. And I think it requires too much information being shared amongst too many people. And so if we're allowed to maintain our information and only provide access when they need it, I think that would be phenomenal. And I think that's the way we should go. Again, this bill is on track if you're sending more than $10,000 to somebody. HR 6582 is the Blockchain Innovation Act. It provides that gains from personal transaction of virtual currencies of $200 or less shall not be included for gross income for taxation purposes. Ta-da! That's that de minimis. But we know that there are multiple bills where that number is whittled down to $50, right? It's unfortunate. Co-sponsored by Tom Emmer again. I think Tom is trying to do as much as he can do to advance this industry. And it's something that if you live in his district, you should be voting for him. If you know people in his district, you should tell them to be voting for him. I know he's going to win hand downs. And we're going to look at that when we get over to 538. A couple more slides and we're going to get there. Okay, the next bill is HR 7231, the Electronic Currency and Secure Currency Act, eCash Act. This directs the Secretary of the Treasury to develop and introduce a form of retail digital dollar called eCash. Now, I know my friend Nick, producer of the show, I'm sure he loves this. Again, not a fan, right? We don't need, CBDCs. And this is not directly a CBDC, but it is a CBDC. And we know that the Fed themselves are even pushing against us having a CBDC. Stable coins is the new thing. And I still believe that USDC is going to ultimately become the digital dollar. If you notice that NFT house that was sold, the USDC, right? I think it's coming. And I think that is going to be a private public partnership between Coinbase and Circle. And yes, Coinbase Circle made USDC. They have another organization or two. I forgot the name. But anyway, I think they're going to do a partnership with the government the same way the Fed did, and maybe even the Fed. Maybe it'll be Coinbase Circle, the Fed, and the government all coming together to make USDC the digital dollar. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I could just be reading tea leaves. Wouldn't shock me, right? Okay, let's look at the next bill, HR 7860, financial freedom. This prohibits the Labor Department from limiting the range or type of investments. This one is really, really good. Again, by our good friend Tom Emmer. See how sharp this guy is? Guys, vote for Tom Emmer. So this is so you can put it in your self-directed IRA, right? And remember, Fidelity came out and Fidelity said, hey, we're going to make it possible that you can put money in your 401ks with Bitcoin. That is the great place. And if that on-ramp opened up and the government just said, listen, folks, in your retirement accounts, you can invest in Bitcoin. Right now, you can technically do it. And if you're risky enough, you can go into GBTC. Actually, to some investments, you can do that. I don't think you can do that with your IRA 401ks. But anyway, if you can move that money and put that into digital assets, how great would that be? Now, a lot of people would say, yeah, Paul, that's really smart. They were doing that at 69,000. Now Bitcoin's down to 20,000. That would be horrible. Well, yeah, it'd be horrible if you're watching it day by day, but whoever does that with their retirement accounts, no one. We all put money in it, set it and forget it, and we walk away. So this is the same thing. You're not doing it for a year or 2 years. You're doing this for 30 or 40 years. 30 or 40 years in Bitcoin is going to look phenomenal, in my personal view, not financial advice. So with that being said, being able to allow you the freedom to use your retirement the way you want to and to put that into Bitcoin is what Tom Emmer is trying to do. And again, we applaud what he's doing. So Tom, thank you, thank you, thank you if you're watching. You're probably not. Okay, the last one I want to cover is the Senate Bill 3867, Digital Assets Sanction Compliance Enhancement Act of 2022. Again, Senator John Tester, Democrat, Montana. Again, this is the one that gets really tricky, right? How do you deal with bad actors on a global scale? You put sanctions on them. They turn to digital assets. They start using digital assets. How do you stop them? Bills like this is talking about trying to sanction digital assets for some of these bad actors, i.e. Russia, that's currently doing crazy stuff in the world. Again, I know we all probably have views on how the government should be interacting with other countries, specifically within the U.S. We had our glory days of dealing with Iraq, and that was horrible. Weapons of mass destruction. That wasn't weapons of mass destruction. Again, these are tight ropes, folks. If you think that this is super easy to handle, I would love to see you in Congress, or I'd love to see you run the country, and I would love to see how you perform and what laws you would pass. It's not as cut and dry and easy, and it's not what the media makes it out to be either. The media is horrible at spinning up and just, they're spin doctors. They spin all this news to make you believe one way or the other, misinformation, the whole 9 yards. But just know, trying to deal with global issues is tough. Glad it's not my job. I'm glad there are people that are out there trying to do the work. And again, another sidebar. When I was in the Navy, we used to always talk about the other branches. But here's the thing. I'm like, I thank God for the people that serve in the Army. I'm for them because I don't want to do it. I'm glad somebody's doing it, and it's not me. I served in the Navy and I served on a submarine. Loved it because I got to sleep in the bed at night and I eat good food. Hey, I love the job that I did. And there are many people that are in the Army that says, dude, you're crazy. I would never want to go in a tube underneath the ocean. So I'm glad you're doing it. So we need to celebrate the fact that there are people out there that are willing to put their lives inside of a fishbowl and allow us to take pot shots at them every day about what should and should not be doing. It's super easy, right, to do that. It's super hard to be in the ring every day. So I don't applaud the government. I think that they do a lousy job. I think they could do better. But at the same time, I do realize that they do have a hard job. Okay, now let's take a look at 538. I think Nick is going to pop this up on the screen. If you guys aren't familiar with 538, they are a behemoth of a research organization when it comes to political campaigns, political elections. These guys are on top of it. They use a lot of different technologies and methodologies to figure this stuff out. But I personally think they're getting it wrong in a couple races, two races in particular, which I might be proven wrong. But it's in Ohio 7. Matthew Deemer, everyone in crypto should know Matthew Deemer because he runs the Decrypt Daily podcast. He's in Ohio 7. And so he is, let me see what he is right now. And I know, Nick, it'd probably be hard for you to find Ohio 7, but it's a red dot right underneath the OH. If you look at OH, it's the red dot right underneath the letters OH. And yeah, Max Miller is chance of winning 98% to Matthew Deemer's 2. Now, again, I think that 538 is getting this incredibly wrong. I think Matthew's going to poll way better than this. I don't think it, and Matthew, if you're listening, I'm sure you'll enjoy me saying this, but you got an uphill battle, buddy. And I know that the media spins your district to be uber red. Maybe a lot of that red will vote blue this time. And if so, that would be a shocker. But I think you're the better candidate. 538 is probably just looking at metrics and numbers and previous elections and things like that in the voting blocks. But I think Matthew might, this might be a Tennessee over Bama. That's what I'm gonna say. It's gonna be like Tennessee and Bama. Who would have thought Tennessee would have beaten Bama? Sorry, John. I know you love me for saying that. But hey, you guys proved the world wrong. Shocking our campaign. Second race is down in Texas, and that one is heavy blue. It's been blue forever and a day. It's the third little blue right on the side of the little three blues, if he can figure it out. But yeah, it's Jasmine Crockett and Dr. James Rogers. Dr. James Rogers, huge Bitcoin advocate, had Bitcoin on his website. As a matter of fact, was one of the only candidates who had Bitcoin on his website. And yeah, he's getting trounced. And Dr. Rogers, if you're listening to me, I'm just saying you got an uphill battle, buddy. That district has been blue for 30 years. To upset that district and turn it red, I applaud you. So if you guys are familiar with Dr. James Rogers, go follow him, check him out. I think it's Rogers, Texas 30. Yeah, give him some support because both of these guys are really strong Bitcoiners. Now, you can see one's Democrat, one's Republican. Both of those guys, I like them. I support them. Why? Because not only do we have Bitcoin in common, some of the issues that they care about, I care about. One of the things both of these candidates are doing, they're saying what? People over politics, or they're saying policy over politics. They care more about the issues and not trying to deal with the platforms either. And I think, not to put words in their mouth, but I think both of these guys are, they're not, their platform doesn't matter, right? Even though they're running on a Democratic ticket, they're running a Republican ticket, I think both of these guys are very, very much middle of the road, and I like that. And they're uniters. Both of them are willing to listen to both sides. Both of them are willing to try and to seek to understand before being understood. And I think that they can be really, really good candidates and then become really good politicians if they get elected. And of course, hopefully they will. There are a lot of other issues going on in the political realm when it comes to this election. As we look at the policies that are not the policies, but as we look at the legislation that's being submitted, some of this legislation might die simply because some of the members who are sponsoring or co-sponsoring it will leave Congress. A lot of the people will be retiring, but some of them will be returning. And when you see states that have a lot of legislation and where a lot of the same members of the same party, that legislation might actually make it to the floor where others might not. 2023 is going to be an interesting year for regulation. There is a lot going on, whether it's with Congress or what's going on with the SEC and the CFTC. And globally, we're seeing regulation be talked about in countries far and wide. I believe, I don't know if I could pull it up in time and tell you guys about it, but even in today's brief, if you look at the regulation section, the legislation and regulation, you got Sam Bankman-Fried, who's drawing fire from DeFi proponents. After his regulation proposal, you got the FDIC head calling to limit stablecoin to permission blockchains only. And then you got Andreessen Horowitz, who just hired McHenry Stafford as the head of the new government affairs. So when you get the VCs starting to get in the mix with, you've got a lot of lobbying that goes into politics with digital assets. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year for regulation. And if by chance we get an ETF next year, or if we get friendly regulation, you're going to see the institutions come in, and institutions are coming in a big way already. If you look at the news from yesterday, I believe it is, I don't know if I can pull that up. There was a lot of news about the institutions sort of in. I think our top stories was around. No, actually they weren't. They were about grayscale. Nope, can't find it. But anyway, institutions are coming in, and I'll tell you why. The banks. BNY Mellon, Fidelity's getting involved, N26 getting involved, right? All these guys are building infrastructure and on-ramps that when the regulation comes into play, that's friendly enough that the masses can start dumping in. And one of the things with Mellon, what they said, which was very interesting, is what? They said, we're building products because our high net worth individuals and our sovereign wealth funds, they came to us and said, hey, we want you to custody digital assets for us. And so BNY Mellon said, hey, if all of you folks are coming to us demanding the service, it's time that we get on board and we offer the service. And so now you're starting to see Fidelity is offering ETH, both custody and staking. You got N26, they're going to start offering trading for over 100 different digital assets, right? This thing is start in these crypto winters. This is where the real building happens. Fast forward 13 to 15 months in the future. By this time next year, or a little toward the end of next year, I think we might see massive adoption coming from all over the place, in addition to the halving coming into play the following year in 2024. So if you're in digital assets, one of the things that I try and tell people, now these are lull, boring, hard, cold times. This is where you really want to be getting busy and active. The whales are getting incredibly active. I do have a section on my brief where I talk about the whales, right? I have a section just for whales. Bitcoin whale accumulating on Binance according to on-chain metrics. That was from Crypto Potato. HODL, Tesla's holding on to all the remaining 218 million. And capitulation of profit taking. Bitcoin whale moves 32 BTC dormant since 2018. And then, of course, you got a Bitcoin addresses that's holding $1.9 billion in Bitcoin. Those are a 20-month high. There's a lot going on. And when you start watching the right thing, you're going to start seeing that this is not over, and it's far from over, and it's not going to be over just because we've taken this hit. And Bitcoin is now at a stable coin, because I think it was my good friend Alexander Loraz who said Bitcoin has been in the 20,000 range for 5 months. This is unheard of. Or maybe it wasn't Alex. I take it back. It wasn't. It was Tyler S. Tyler S. Crypto. He said that, and it's true. We've been sitting at about this $19,000, $20,000 range for a very long time, and it's got a lot of us like, please do. It's got us doing the little guy with the stick pushing at the Bitcoin saying, do something. I don't care what you do, go up or down, but do something, right? This sideways action, it can get brutal on your mindset. So don't get worn out by Bitcoin not moving. Be patient. And I believe it was Travis Kling who says what? Wealth moves from the impatient to the patient. And so if you're patient, move your direction. And that's really good. All right. If my producer can put up the last couple of slides that I had on my slideshow presentation. Again, I'd like to thank Capitol Crypto, George, the work he's doing with the legislative tracker. It's huge. Why? Because it can be used by the folks on Capitol Hill, and it can be used by you and me. It helps us identify who our representatives are, what bills they're proposing, how we should be reaching out to them, the whole 9 yards. Really, really take time to do that. If you're international, I'm hoping that some of this information is helping you understand what's going on over here in the US as far as the politics and how it very well might impact even where you live. The US has a lot of fingers and tentacles around the globe. And so a lot of things that we do here impacts the rest of the globe. And so maybe some of this information will be good for you as well. The best way to connect, as you guys always know, is on Twitter. That's where I live. I've been fighting the bots. So I am constantly, actually, there's a platform called Tweepy. And this is not a sponsored spot, just because I like Tweepy. But anyway, Tweepy lets you identify accounts that have no bios, that have eggshell head thingies, no picture, things like that. And it lets you see when the last time they tweeted or had activity. I've had a lot of accounts that were following me that haven't been active in like 5 years. So I've been going actively and making them unfollow me, right? So you can do that with this platform. You can just say unfollow, unfollow, unfollow. So I've been doing that. I want to get down to the real number of people that are actively following me and actively engage with me. And even if that number comes down to that I only get 1,000 people, great. I really don't care. Guys, listen, these platforms, it's ridiculous. They could do this for us if they wanted to, but they refuse to. So people that pop collars talking about they have millions of followers and all this other nonsense, how many of those are bots? How many of them are fake? How many of them are people that and those accounts are no longer even valid anymore? This is the problem with social media, and this is where I'm hoping that technology will take us, that we can fix and clean all this stuff up. If everybody had a digital ID, guess what would happen? You couldn't have fake accounts. You couldn't have bots out there. That would be really great. So, but you can follow me on Twitter. You can visit my website at thecryptocurator.com, which Nick had up earlier before. On the website, I'm starting to do something I think is really cool, and I think it'll help a lot of you out, is that I'm trying to identify the news that's getting the most traction. And so what we're finding is that certain news is mentioned across publications, right? Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, BIC, Bitcoin Magazine, like they're mentioned everywhere. And so some of these articles I make sure I highlight and I put them at the very top of my brief. Thanks for pulling up the brief, Nick. At the very top, I call it trending, right? This is the trending section. And then I put news that's gaining traction. So if it's been mentioned in 3 or more publications, it's gaining traction. More than 3 publications, it is the trending news of the day. And most of the time, that's what we're talking about on Twitter. Those articles are being talked about everywhere. Everyone's engaged with it. There are some articles only gets mentioned in 1 publication. That's pretty much it, which is, and some of those are big stories, but nobody's really covering them that well. But I do that for that reason. I try to put a video so that you guys will see a video for the day, one that I find the most interesting, and a podcast for the way you guys will be able to have something to listen to. I call it my read, watch, and listen. I tell people this many times. If I can get you reading what I read, watching what I watch, and listening to what I listen to, you don't have to worry about anything I say. Don't pay attention to me. I'm trying to point you guys to where the information is. And that's what I want you to do. Go where the information is. And if you do it on your own, great. And if you don't need me, hey, listen, that's great too, right? Because if I'm gone tomorrow because I pass away and I'm not going to be here, you got to learn how to do it yourself anyway, right? So keep reading, watching, and listening what's out there, because there's so much going on. If you pay attention, it will give you the confidence and it will tell you what you need to do. You don't need to listen to someone give you financial advice. You can do it on your own, and you can do it because you've been paying attention. You don't need a talking head like me to tell you that there's big things going on in Bitcoin and that it is not going to go away. If you believe a Jamie Dimon, or if you believe a Warren Buffett, over the mountain of information that's going on and the mountain of activity that's going on, acceptance, adoption of digital assets, shame on you. Sorry, that's on you, boo. It's not on anybody else. You can't blame anybody for missing the boat, right? I still have people coming to me, I wish I would have listened to you when you told me about, but guys, are you reading, watching, and listening to what I do? If you do, you're going to get it. So, all right, I've rambled enough. I'm going to let you folks go. Thank you all for listening to me. I'm hoping, let me drop this little nugget. So I've asked my friend George, Cap Hill Crypto, to come on the show the Thursday after the election, and we're going to really chew up what happened in the election, things like that on this show. And that'll be the Thursday after the election. So more information is going to be coming out about that. Again, my fingers are crossed, nothing happens. Hoping George makes it, because he's a wealth of knowledge and he's got a wealth of experience in this area, because working as legislative aide for a senator is a very powerful position. And so we're crypto, and I like that we're Congress and crypto meets. I think that's awesome. But the point that I'm making is that come check the show out on that Thursday following the election. There's going to be a lot of hype going on, and it'll be interesting to see if, in fact, 538 is correct or not. Will we see Republicans take control of both chambers, or will we see Democrats retain control of the Senate, but in the House? It's going to be fascinating. So come back here and join me. This is Paul McNeil, the Crypto Curator. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week and great weekend. Later.